The Day of the Doctor, the
Yep.
special 50th anniversary episode. Gary, I believe you've watched this one twice.
Yes, I have watched it twice, and I've also gone back and watched certain bits of it because I found I'll post it in the Facebook group and on Twitter, but there's a brilliant BuzzFeed article about 25 Easter eggs, sorry, 35 Easter eggs that were hidden in the episodes that were a kind of a nod to Doctor Who, some of which I got, some of which I didn't. So yeah, I've kept it. I think it's going to go on the hard drive and be one to keep because I think it was
Cool.
a special episode.
Yeah. So I suppose this one was. We found out in this one about what sort of John Hurt's Doctor fit in, didn't we? And all the
Yeah.
his part in the Doctor Who timeline. I suppose that was the main story, really, wasn't it? He was the he was the one between Paul McGann and Chris Eccleston, was he not? Was that the
That's right.
the lineage?
That would make him something like the only problem is that kind of makes the whole Doctor thing, the number of the Doctor go out of sequence, doesn't it? Because Christopher Eccleston was the 9th Doctor.
I
I can't
believe
remember.
they are. I saw on. I can't remember what I saw. It may have been that awful after party thing. I don't know if you caught that.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, well, I'll talk about that. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
It was basically they described him as the War Doctor, so he's not got an official number. He's simply referred to as the War Doctor.
Right.
So basically, this was them. He was involved in the Great Time War, wasn't he? He was the.
Well, that's what I couldn't quite. I mean, I know obviously there's a time travel element, but I would have thought that made him Doctor Zero, like before William Hartnell's Doctor, because obviously, but of course, it being a time war, they can pretty much put it whenever they like.
If you remember though, when they brought it back, Christopher Eccleston was the Doctor. They did mention this time war, and I suppose this was something that Stephen Moffat had always had to explore, didn't he? And we had this, also we had the return of David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. 10th.
Yep. There were quite a few returns. We had the return. Yeah, well, that's the thing now. Now you're beginning to lose track of who's who. We also had the return of Billie Piper, although I'm not quite sure whether you're.
Role in this? What was her? She wasn't playing Rose, was she?
Well, look, what she was the human conscience of the machine of the weapon that the Gallifreyans had rescued or found that was going to basically destroy all the Daleks and Gallifrey. And I'm not quite sure whether she was supposed to be Rose Tyler or whether she was supposed to be just what the Doctor saw.
She did say that she'd taken a form of someone who he didn't know, but would be a big influence in his future. I think.
That's right, because of course, if he regenerated into Christopher Eccleston, then of course she started with Christopher Eccleston and then transferred over to David Tennant. So.
But I suppose the main bulk of the story was to do with the Sontarans? Is that right? Am I right?
Yes. The Sontarans, who cleverly kept into what these time photos or timescapes and hid in there until... I mean, basically they saw Earth as a place that they could come and inhabit and take over, but they didn't see that it was quite technologically advanced as it was in the Queen Elizabeth the first days, so they hid in photographs or pictures until they were able to come into real life, and that was basically sort of it. Is that there was quite a lot of sort of like Earth history revision and Who revision that Stephen Moffat managed to weave into this story.
And of course, a lot of it came out in 3D because they were showing it in 3D, were they not, in certain cinemas across the country, I believe?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance. I was going to try and get to one of them, but then I ended up double booking myself on that night, so I didn't get a chance to go. But I do know some people that went to cinemas, and they said the 3D was quite good, and there's a hope that they might do a limited sort of special Blu-ray DVD edition of the episode with all these kind of extra programs, maybe even included, that I've heard. So probably not in time for Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, this was, as well, I suppose, this is Matt Smith's penultimate episode, isn't it? And I didn't think he was maybe given enough prominence as the current Doctor. What do you think? Do you think he was? Because it was the sort.
Have you ever seen previous attempts to have more than one Doctor in an episode?
I haven't. No.
No, they've always gone for the very quirky parts where they're kind of like, the things that they did, where they put on the glasses and the fez, and they pick on each other's clothing and they pick on each other's TARDIS. Yeah, that's quite banterish and quite good. I think one of the things that they did, was each Doctor seemed to have a part of the show. And you're right, Matt Smith, I don't know whether perhaps just because it's the way he plays the Doctor, he didn't quite seem to have the authority of the other two.
No. I mean,
and I don't know
have to say,
because he's a much younger actor than both David Tennant and John Hurt. I don't know.
I have to say, I've never been a massive fan of David Tennant's Doctor. I would say I sort of dipped out of it a bit when he joined. I mean, to be fair, I think you're a big Doctor Who fan, aren't you? Just generally,
I am. I have the Doctor Who dictionary, the things like that, and I'm a big fan of Doctor Who. I grew up watching Peter Davidson and Colin Baker.
I suppose because you're a little bit older than myself and Luke, who I suppose we grew up in a childhood which was Who-less, wasn't it? Really, I mean,
that's right. Yeah, you grew up in the Sylvester McCoy to McCann.
Well, no, I mean, McCoy finished when I was 6. So
really,
yeah, I remember the Paul McGann film. I have a vague recollection of that.
To be honest, and we'll talk about the whole the programs that came on. People look back on that now with a bit of nostalgia. I remember thinking it was rubbish when it came out.
The Paul McGann thing?
Yeah, I remember thinking it was horrible.
Yeah.
So
I watched
it's
that.
It's interesting that they now kind of look back on it quite fondly.
Well, the reason maybe that was because it was a co-production with America, and that was part of the reason why it never went on as a series, wasn't it? Because
that's right. Julia Roberts' brother was
Eric.
in it as the master, Eric, and he was terrible, camp and horrible, not in a bad way.
I think I read recently that it tanked in America, and that's why they never did a full series, because it was meant to be a co-production between the BBC and the American network, and it did really well over here. But in America, obviously, it's sort of a cult. It's still a cult thing, isn't it, in America?
Very much so, and I think I know there's a big audience in America for things like Doctor Who and Red Dwarf and very British sci-fi shows. But I think actually to have made a program out there, then I think that'd be very difficult. I think it's like if they were to do a British remake, an American remake of EastEnders, it wouldn't work. But they're very happy to enjoy and watch they'd never do an American Downton Abbey. I suppose there are some shows that are quintessentially British. And Doctor Who, I think, is one of them. It's what makes it good is its Britishness. So, back to the episode. I mean, obviously, as we've said, the Sontarans. This one, there were wonderful little things in there, wonderful peaks and troughs. There was some exciting, good comedy. There was some action scenes. I did like the most hilarious bit to me was when the three Doctors put their heads together and worked out that they could write a piece of code in and then not one of them, and then Clara comes in through the door and goes, "It was unlocked." That was a lovely hark back to the idea that sometimes even the Doctor can overthink a situation.
And I suppose in this episode as well, we saw Clara teaching at the same school at the very start, wasn't it?
Yes,
that was Ian and something. I'm trying to remember from the William Hartnell thing I saw. I did actually watch the very first episode, BBC Four. I don't know.
School was where companions Ian Chester and Barbara Wright taught, and that was the school where Clara was doing that.
What did you? I mean, as a whole, I have to say I haven't been overly fond of Jenna, or she's not Louise Coleman now, is she? She's dropped the Louise. Jenna Coleman's performance throughout, but I thought in the special she sort of shone a little bit more. Do you think that? Do you?
Yeah, I think they've definitely worked out that this is Matt Smith's penultimate episode. We need to focus on the fact that he is going to be regenerating. Jenna Coleman is going to be staying, so in that sense, you need to, in this episode and the Christmas special, probably have to be quite heavy on her character because she's going to be carrying on, whereas you have to then learn and get used to the new Doctor. So I think, that's definitely good. I think that there's a similar thing with Billie Piper towards the end of the Christopher Eccleston era. Her storyline started to increase because she was going to bridge two Doctors. And even I think they brought back the boyfriend, didn't they? Who ended up, Billie
they had
Piper's
all
boyfriend.
those, Noel Clarke.
Yeah, they kind of came back and stuff, so I can't remember his name. I know it's the guy that's now...
Mickey.
That's it, yeah, Mickey. We're talking about what we liked about the episode. Was there anything that perhaps we didn't like?
I think it was, for me, it was a bit long, I would say. I think, was it 75 minutes or something like that?
It was, it was an hour and sort of 20 or something.
Yeah, I think you could have condensed it easily into an hour for me, I would say. I think there were parts where I did sort of start to get a little bit bored. It just, do you know what I mean? It sort of, there was peaks and troughs. I mean, the best bits, obviously, as you've already mentioned, were the bits where all the Doctors were together. But there are other little bits. I mean, what did you think of Joanna Page as Queen Elizabeth and that sort of having that sort of... Sorry.
It ties up some Doctor Who bits, there were episodes where, obviously Stephen Moffat implanting ideas for later had done bits. So there was a scene with David Tennant back in those days where, Queen Elizabeth said, you're leaving again, are you? And we're all kind of going, what? And now you understand it. Things like that. I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the Queen Elizabeth bit. It didn't really need it, but it did explain. I mean, we have had the explanation that Torchwood and things like that came from that Elizabethan era. So, I can see why they did it. I didn't need it. I didn't think hers.
Yeah, I think that was...
Or the woman who's supposed to be the daughter of the Brigadier were particularly strong actresses.
Gemma Redgrave. I would say.
I liked.
Yeah, I liked the sort of introduction of her in that that cube. Was it the cubes? Do you remember that one where the cubes kept attacking people? I like the introduction of her, and I obviously again the sort of hint to the past with is it Spectre? No, is it Spectre? Am I right there?
What, her father?
Yeah, the organisation.
Oh gosh, I can never remember that. It's part of my I think it's called Inspect or something like that. But it's her father is the Brigadier who in the second and third Doctor, where he's banished to Earth, he works for this organisation of which the Brigadier is in charge, and that's how they come to know each other through that. There were several nods to sort of great stuff in the universe. I was a little bit disappointed about the lack of Daleks and Cybermen. It is the Doctor Who 50th anniversary. I wanted a Dalek. I wanted a Cyberman. I didn't want the Sontarans, really. That's the only thing that I can really pick there and go, I really would have liked Davros or something like... Or the Master, I wanted a classic bad guy. The Sontarans were a bit wishy-washy.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, having read about the Christmas special, it seems that a lot of the big villains are going to be in that. So I wonder if
well, that's right, and that's they're obviously there's going to be
that would be overkill. This was. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say I agree. I think I agree with you there.
All right. I said in a way this was the penultimate. The 50th anniversary, but it's also sort of the build-up to Matt Smith's last episode. So in a way, they wanted to sort of do a celebration, but at the same time, they didn't want to throw everything at it because they know they've got this. The next episode is going to be equally monumental. And I suppose
it's important that we say that you did get the trailer at the end for the Christmas special, which is obviously going to feature around Trenzalore and the grave of the Doctor, and some of the things I read is that you're not really. I mean, the problem is you already know there's a new Doctor, but in the Christmas episode, you're really going to be led down the line of thinking the Doctor is going to die and not regenerate. But they've kind of ruined that a little.
Let's just not give a lot of spoilers though for Christmas. That'll be a bit.
Well, that's supposed to be. Can I just say, did you in any way like the cameo of the new Doctor in this episode?
I thought it was just right. It was just the eyes. You know, you didn't get anything else, and I thought it was a nice little touch because this was all about all the Doctors in all their TARDISes were attacking.
Yeah,
they were all involved in this big end thing, and I thought for me that was probably one of the best scenes in the episode, wasn't it? With all the TARDISes, all the Doctors together. So I
think I was a bit disappointed. You know, we have 3 or 4 more living Doctors. You know, you have Peter Davidson, Colin Baker, Sylvester
we'll go on
McCann.
to something they did. Did you watch the reboot?
Yes, I have.
Thing?
I have seen that, and that was hilarious.
Well, we'll talk about that
in a minute.
Yeah. I mean,
and I was kind of a bit disappointed that, again, you know, I can understand that you don't want to delve too much into the history because a lot of the previous Doctors have, a lot of them have passed on. But you had 4...
Only 3?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Well, there's only been... I mean, well, Colin Baker, obviously... Tom Baker was obviously in the episode at the end. A lot of, there was a huge nerd implosion, wasn't there? You know, they managed to keep that pretty secret, didn't they? I know there were screenings a week before, but I didn't really see any spoilers on Twitter.
No, I think people.
So that was a nice
death, weren't they? Like, threatened.
They probably had to sign agreements and things that they couldn't reveal that. So that was a nice surprise for the fans.
And what did you? And the Tom Baker thing as well. Did you like that?
I'm not the hugest Tom Baker as a Doctor Who fan. I mean, he wasn't my Doctor Who.
He's sort of lauded as the best one, isn't he? He's sort of lauded as
he held it the longest. So, and he is the one that, if you look at the later Doctors, you can certainly see that they. I mean, certainly Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, even to some extent David Tennant, all look to him as their classic Doctor.
Yeah.
So, which I think is important.
Do you think the episode was hurt by Christopher Eccleston not agreeing to do it? Because I think, we know that he was asked to do it and turned it down. Do you think?
I think the thing is what they've managed to do in sort of, is they've managed to show that obviously as the Doctor came out of the Time War, which is the Christopher Eccleston, he was a different Doctor. So they've kind of explained to you why Christopher Eccleston's Doctor was a 1-year standalone Doctor. Because he was so affected. Stephen Moffat has very cleverly rewritten the history a bit in the way that fits in, which Russell T Davies is responsible for the reboot, but wasn't quite as involved in going back into the history of the Doctor in a way Stephen Moffat has done.
No.
Stephen Moffat has definitely thought about how the fans will, perceive it. So,
do you think that? But my point is, in terms of that regeneration scene, do you think it would have had a bit more, gravitas or sort of more of a place in history had you seen John Hurt regenerate into Christopher Eccleston, which I believe, I don't know for sure, but I reckon that was probably the original plan because there was a big thing made that they tried to get him to.
Christopher Eccleston, not exactly known for his, cameo roles. You probably thought, well, if I'm not going to be featured, why should I bother? And to be fair, that's part of what I know that Colin Baker has said. It would have been nice if we could have been included, but in the end, it would have been nice if we all could have had a part. Because again, I'm sure they probably. They could have rewritten it, but they wanted to focus on, by bringing in an actor of the gravitas of John Hurt. Really, do you need all these other Doctors? No. I mean, he's slightly shadow Matt Smith and David Tennant. So,
but I think the point is that Eccleston's Doctor would have fit into they wouldn't be bringing him back just to bring him back. It fit into the story and it fit into the timeline. You know what I mean? because you had David. The point was that they were saying that Tennant and Smith's Doctors had been influenced by this version of the Doctor to an extent that had come before them.
Yeah.
And obviously Eccleston was the one before those two, and I think if you had him in some small capacity, then I think it would have worked in terms of the story. Also, I think aside from those other Doctors, they all like being associated with the role, as you mentioned, Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy and Davidson. Eccleston has always been the one who sort of tries to sort of cast it away from his CV almost, doesn't he? He did.
Well, I think he's very keen not to be typecast.
No. But
his Doctor didn't look like the other Doctors. He wore a black leather jacket. He was a human.
I liked him in the role. So, I have to say, I really liked him in the role. But I think he was sort of leaving the role, before it even come back. He'd agreed to do it, I think, for Russell T Davies because they were quite close.
That's it. That's it. He took on a job. He didn't necessarily want a career as the Doctor. And of course, don't forget, he was already a known. Unlike in some of these situations, or certainly in Matt Smith's case, he was a known commodity before he took on the job.
Yeah.
To some extent, you could look at how well David Tennant has done since, but he was at least slightly known before he came into the role, and of course Matt Smith was fairly unknown.
Yeah.
A lot of the Doctors were fairly. I know we're going to talk about An Adventure in Time and Space, but you can see how William Hartnell, what he brought to the original role, and how he gave that legitimacy, but also had a reputation as well.